Hello, this is Jim Bradley, and this is the third tutorial in my series on sorting data with Python. I'll show you how to sort data in Python lists in this session using Lambda functions. Lambda functions are convenient when list elements have complex structures. We'll focus first on lists whose elements are multi-dimensional tuples. So let's get going. Let's create a Lambda function and then talk about how we'd use that in sorting data. So permit me to write an expression that creates a Lambda function, and I'll explain the components as we go along. First of all, G is the name I'm going to give to my Lambda function, and I establish it by typing the word Lambda using a lowercase l. And in this case, I'm going to type x colon x double asterisks 2. And the double asterisk here means that we're going to square a particular value that's stored in a variable. Now, the way that this expression works is G, as I said, is the name of my Lambda function. Lambda defines G as a Lambda function. And then I have two expressions over here separated by a colon. What this says is G is going to be a function that's going to take one parameter, and we're going to call that x. And it's going to take that as an input. Whatever's on the left-hand side of the colon is an input. And G is going to output whatever is on the right-hand part of the expression after the colon. So if x is an inputted value, what this function is going to do is take that x, it's going to square it, and then G will return that squared value. So let's hit return and establish G. And so let's see how it works. Let's type print G, and G is expecting one input parameter, one input value. Let's give it 3. And so what we would expect to happen is G would take the value 3 as an input, square it, and return 9 as an output. Let's see if that happens. And that's precisely what happened. So you can use Lambda to define any function you might want to define. Another function we might define is this one. And so what this expression is going to do is define a Lambda function h, and it's going to take as an input some value that we're going to theoretically assign to a variable x. And what we're going to output is the element of x that corresponds with an index of 1. So let's hit return and create h. So for example, if we were to pass h a tuple that has 3 members, 0, 1, and 2, and hit return, we would expect h to return the element in that tuple corresponding with an index of 1, which should be, in this case, the 1. So let's hit return. And that's precisely what we got. H will also work in this case if you pass it a list of values. And so think to yourself, which element in that list has an index of 1, and H should return that. And it did the right thing. It gave us a value of 4, which is the element that has an index of 1 in that expression. So let's see how we can use Lambda functions now to help sort data in Python. And what we're going to see is that we can use them in much the same way that we use the operator.itemGetter method to tell Python what the key is that we want it to perform its sort on. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a list And so let's make sure that we got our data safely into the list2 variable, and we did. Okay, so what we can do now is use our sort method. We can take list2, sort, and as I mentioned, we're going to specify a key. In this case, we're going to use a lambda function. So let's just type in lambda. And as an input, we're going to use whatever value is passed to this lambda function. And what we're going to output is we're going to take whichever element of x has an index 1. So we're typing a lambda function explicitly directly into the sort function and using it to specify a key. And if we do that, we're expecting to sort this list2 based on the elements 9, 8, and 7, since those are the ones that correspond with an index of 1. And we would expect them to be in ascending order because that's the default, and we haven't specified otherwise for the reverse parameter. So let's hit return, and let's check out and see what list2 looks like. And indeed, we've managed to sort in ascending order using the elements of the tuples that have an index of 1. Now, it turns out that if we would have specified a function, a lambda function, and assigned it to a letter as we did up above, or some other variable name, we can accomplish the very same thing that we just did by using that representation that we've already defined for a lambda function. In this case, h is a variable, a lambda function, that accomplishes the very same thing that we typed explicitly into this sort statement. So now we can accomplish the very same thing, meaning using the elements of the tuple that have 1 as an index and sorting by those, by specifying as the key the lambda function h. And we've just done this exact operation, so just so we do something that changes the order of the list, let's specify that reverse equals true. And let's take a look at our list2 list, and indeed we've just reversed the order of the tuples, again by sorting in descending order based on the elements of the tuples that have an index of 1. So that's sorting with lambda functions.